and the business angel is their acceptance to risk. If you face such a guy who wants to invest in your company, just be extremely honest to him and let him be extremely honest with you and speak to him whether he accepts a high risk of losing money or not. Normal business angel, he doesn't work just to earn a billion. He works to make his life more funny, you know. So he understands that $1 million he is investing in your company is most likely to be lost, because it's a sad reality of early stage startups. And if he accepts these risks, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's worth to work with him. If he doesn't, if he thinks that you will owe those money to him and he will, I don't know, get your apartment in exchange of lost money or something, just avoid such guys. So in Russia, for example, 10 years ago, we had really a lot of cases with such inexperienced investors and some really bad cases with early stage startups. That's the first very important thing. The next thing is a lot of even professional business angels, they consider themselves to be experts in some segments. Let's say in, I don't know, SaaS platforms or something. And they are absolutely sure that they know this segment much better than you. And they quite often try to control all your operations, go deep into control of your company. And this is another thing to be discussed before you get money from them. Just be very careful and explain them and let them explain you their position in regards to the company management. So of course they may become a part of board. Of course they may become your mentor and advisor in some very important decisions, but you're still head of your company. Just don't lose this thing. Don't become his, I don't know, stuff. So that's very important, because I really faced a lot of startups who lost their management role. Founders lost their management role in the company and transferred it to angels. And those startups, all of them died. With no good cases here. All of them died. So just be very careful with angels whom to choose. Next type of investor is a corporate fund. Corporate fund is, let's say, some large corporation which wants to invest some amount into startups, and corporate funds are always aimed to grow products which are complementary with their main business. So if it's let's say bank, some modern bank, and they have an internal venture fund, they will invest in fintech products which are complementary with the banking business, and their aim is always to acquire you, to purchase your company as cheap as possible and as early as possible. They don't want to grow a unicorn. They usually don't want to give you a lot of power in your company. They just grow you to acquire. In some cases, it may be a very good case for you. If you don't want to, I don't know, to get $1 billion, if you want to, I don't know, get 5-10 millions in 3-4 years, and that's enough for you. So yeah, then corporate fund may be a good choice for you. But if you want to grow something bigger, just avoid those companies. As per my experience, I faced several projects who raised money from corporate funds, and they were very uncareful with the terms, and those corporate funds get too much power, veto rights, board seats, and so on, a lot of power, and they blocked all further fundraising attempts of this company, and in fact they acquired them 10, maybe 20 times cheaper than this company could reach. So just just understand that if you want to grow a unicorn, avoid corporate funds. If you want to grow something fast and get fast exit, maybe it's a good choice for you. But let's just keep it in mind. Next persons are venture funds, yes, as our fund, for example. So those guys maybe bear potentially lowest risks for startups, because all of them understand the risks of losing money, understand the risks of lack of management, of founders management in the company. They have another aim. Most of venture funds have a limited lifetime. Normally it's 8 to maybe 10 years. And their aim is to sell their share as big price as possible, with as big multiple as possible, maybe 100, 100x. Yeah, 100x is a mantra, venture mantra or something. And so you should understand that they are never interested in, let's say, dividends. They are much less interested in IPO. What do they need is to grow an acquisition target from you, to become an acquisition target for let's say Google or Amazon or something. So, and when you face VC, it's normal when they ask, what is your exit strategy, guys? Because they understand that they need to sell the share in your company in, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years at maximum. And before speaking with venture funds, it's very useful to just to imagine something, to maybe dig something, some deals into marketing, just in Google. What deals with companies in the same field were held in the last 2 years. And this will give a VC an understanding. Okay, such companies like yours may be acquired by, let's say, Nestle in 3 years. Okay, I accept that. If you have no answer on your exit strategy, it's always a minus for you. So just turn on your imagination and think about something before speaking with VC. Okay, and of course there are toxic investors. So first, yes, as I said before, non-professional private investors are usually very toxic, because they will block something, they will try to get your power, management power, and sometimes you may have some personal consequences if you lose their money. So just be very careful here. Be extremely careful with government-related funds. It's, let's say, a very complicated topic. In some cases, government-related funds are good, but you should understand they are always much more formal and bureaucratic than normal VCs, classical private VCs. Let's say one good example. One good example is our taxi ride-hailing application. Our investee is Bolt. It's a company with origins from Estonia. Now it's a unicorn. It's a unicorn where Daimler, Mercedes-Benz invested, where Didi, Chinese Uber, invested in. It's extremely successful company. But at the very beginning of their history, they tried to raise money from Polish government-related fund. And it was a nightmare. They spent almost a year just trying to deal with them. And their terms, terms in the SPA from that fund were absolutely terrible. So they needed a veto right, they needed a lot of papers, a lot of reports for everything. They needed to be very deep into operations. And in fact, if the company get those money from that fund, they would stop their development. And many government-related funds, they have a term that you as a founder have to move to the country. So if it was a Polish company, Polish related government fund, So you have to move to Poland and organize your headquarters there. So just be very careful. It's not a tragedy, but be very careful with such investors. Investor background is another very important thing, because just check where this investor invested before, what is their success story. Maybe if you have contacts of their investees, it's a good idea to just to speak to them. So how do you deal with this investor? Are you satisfied with them? So how are that guys in total? It's a good idea. So okay, there are two main approaches to fundraising. First is relates to some, let's say, big venture formula: burn capital as fast as it comes to drive growth. It's, let's say, an Uber style. So they were the first mover on the market, and they raised as much as they could just to form blocks for our other competitors. Extremely fast expansion, total media coverage, active hiring, active approaching of new investors to raise more and more and more money to become a player number one in the world. It's a good strategy for some cases if you are strong enough to raise such tremendous amount of money, and if you are really a player number one on the market. And this approach has, of course, some pros and cons. First, you may grow your audience quite fast. You may form market barriers for competitors, and of course, larger and larger investors will be interested in participation in your company. But of course, it's always hard to get to larger VCs, really hard. And even Uber, they were struggling in the beginning, trying to get really serious players. Deferred profitability means that you have to invest all your money in growth. And of course, you will lose most of invested money, and your economics may not work for years, for many years. And of course, substantial dilution of the founders, it's another problem. I will raise it in further slides. So if the more money you raise, the faster you raise, the more you are diluted. So let's say in the beginning, you may have 100% in your company. After 2 years of a very active fundraising, you may have 10%. And of course, much less management power in your company. And you may become just really vulnerable here. Another controversial example is bootstrapping, when you don't get venture money at launch at all. So if you have some amount of your personal money, you invest there, I don't know, 20, 30,000 bucks or something. It may become a good choice for a small team of tech guys who doesn't need a lot of marketing, a lot of, I don't know, hiring and so on. They can just build their product in garage at night. If you have a really viral product where you don't need to spend on marketing and on promotion, and if you have a viral product, maybe bootstrapping is also a good choice when your product sells itself. And of course, if you turn on early monetization, it's also a good thing, because let's say now I invest in a very good company which was bootstrapped, and they invested their own money and turned on the monetization at the beginning. And that's why now at Series A they have more than 80% share of the for the founders in the company, so they were not diluted, but they turned their monetization at the very early stage, which gave them enough money to develop the product without raising money just at launch. So maybe of course there are pros and cons here. So you still keep being independent in decision making. You do not dilute your share in the company, but of course you have a very small, very restricted budget. it's harder to scale the business without a large amount of money. And of course, if you mistake, if something goes wrong, you lose all your money. It's your personal money, but yes, you will lose it, and maybe you have to find just a job somewhere. But of course, the truth is somewhere in between. Maybe it's a good choice just to bootstrap at the beginning if you have the required amount, and then go deeper with venture. It's up to you. Yeah, just described two principally different choices. Before you fundraise, of course, you have some kind of issues. First of all, it's jurisdiction. So where to organize a company? Of course, all venture comes from the US, from the Silicon Valley, and of course, there are largest VCs there, the fattest ones, best networking in the world and infrastructure and so on, but extremely high prices. So, we invested 60 companies, and maybe about 40 of them are in the Silicon Valley. And only one of them have their development office in the Silicon Valley. Most of them have just only had the headquarters there, but the development is somewhere in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, in Portugal, in Latin America, somewhere where the prices are cheaper. And only one company which has development office in the San Francisco. They're really struggling there because developers there have extremely high prices, extremely high salaries, and they all need options to be vested every year, and that dilutes founders and dilutes the investors, early investors, really seriously, and it's very uncomfortable to have a development office in the US. But of course, it's a good thing to have a headquarter there and to get to largest VCs if you plan to organize a globally oriented company. Of course, the next thing is Europe. Of course, Europe is very different. There is UK with their own rules and their own market. There is Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, and Southern Europe, and Western Europe. And they are all different. But let's say a European venture market is now growing, is now really growing fast. And there are more and more startups here and more money invested in European markets. But the issue here is a very locally oriented investors. So if you, I don't know, want to reach a German VC, so this VC will ask you whether are you going to develop your startup in Germany or not? Are you oriented on German market or not? So I've personally faced such an approach in Germany, in France, in Baltics, at least. Let's say UK market is very different, is extremely different from the other parts of Europe, but just be careful here and be ready that most European investors are very locally oriented, many of them. Russia, CIS, part of Eastern Europe, of course, there are best talents here, maybe at the lowest prices in the world. But of course, in many countries, there is the infrastructure struggling, some political risks, of course, what we see now in Belarus. And we have our startup there. Maybe you heard about them, PandaDoc. Yeah, so it's our early investment, and we know Mikita, and of course we're with him. But yeah, they now have really serious political problems, and I was at their office 2 years ago in the center of Minsk, and it's wonderful. It was wonderful. They have a very good atmosphere inside the office, inside the team, and so I really like what Mikita made. But now they have real troubles here. So yeah, that's the reality. And sometimes it's hard to get to US on Europe or European, maybe Western European investors when you're, let's say, in Russia, and when you have a company in Russia. So let's say our fund despite we have Russian founders and most people in the companies are Russians, but we never invest in just Russian-oriented startups. We never invest in Russian legal persons. We invest in the company if they only have a European or American legal entity, and if they are only globally or European or let's say Pan-American oriented in terms of getting revenue. So yeah, we really seriously consider political and infrastructure risks on post-Soviet space, post-Soviet territory. Okay, let's go next. Next thing is intellectual property. So really often I face startups, even software, and okay, maybe for hardware it's okay, but for even software startups, they think that it's important to officially register their intellectual property. It's very important and maybe a deal breaker for investor and so on. I would say no. For most investors, it's much more important how you deal with your developers. So at due diligence, we always check the contracts with your developers, how you put terms with about intellectual property there. So all intellectual property made by this particular developer must be owned by the company. So please take a good professional legal attorney who will prepare a normal contract with the developer for you, because it's the most important thing in terms of intellectual property. A lot of cases on the market when you get problems, founder can get some problem with the developers, dev teams, or particular persons, and the developer left the company, steal the code, and watch something the same. It's a real problem, and the most important part here is a good, well-prepared contract. So just be careful here. Of course, besides contracts with developers, third parties' rights. That means that if you have some licensed software inside your product or something, it all should be very well done with a good legal attorney. Your trademarks should be original, and this thing may be registered, and it's good when your trademark is registered before the investments. It may be registered for the company or for the founder and then transferred to the company. It's not very important, but yes, it's a good case. Patents, okay, if you have some potentially patentable IP, it's okay. If you do not have, it's not a problem. For software-based companies, it's not a problem at all. For hardware-based, maybe yes, it's a good idea to prepare an application, a patent application, but it's not a deal breaker as usual, because at early stage, we all understand that the product will be changed multiple times for the next several years. And it may be just a waste of time and money to get those official patents and so on, and official registrations of the IP at the early stage. So just feel the balance here. Don't lose too much time and money here. Investors do not value such things. Most of the investors at all. Other potential due diligence issues. Disputes, penalties, and loans. So only one comment here. Of course, your company may have some story, may have some dark stories in the past. Of course, you may have some disputes, I don't know, some loan history or penalties from something or somebody. But the only thing here is just be very honest with the investor. Don't try to hide something. If you have a dispute with, I don't know, maybe previously worked some of your stuff, some developer you worked with in the past, and you have a dispute with them, just be honest and tell everything to the investor about it. Because if they invest money and they reveal that you're hiding something, this story may be finished in the court. Be very serious here. it's not a problem to just to let the investor understand all the story, all your dark stories. But it may become a problem if you hide something. Okay, let's go next to different types of investments. Grants, free money. Sometimes it's great, sometimes not. Convertible notes and safes, there are some differences between them, and this instrument is quite universal, but not as universal as many people think. Equity round, equity, of course, it's when you issue some shares in exchange of new money for the company. It's a very, very standard thing, sometimes complicated, sometimes not. I will try to cover it. And cash out. Cash out is, yes, what all of you dreaming about, when you have enough cash to buy that blue Maserati. But yeah, just don't get hurry here. Okay, let's start from the grants. Of course, some universities, some governmental funds provide grants to some kinds of early stage startups. Let's say I know a very good story. We invested in one company, a very talented guys there. They created a very important socially important thing, which helped blind people orient in their environment. So it was a very important thing, very good thing, and they got a lot of grants to develop this device. Really a lot of. They were very talented in getting grants. I think 10 or something, 10 grants, or maybe even more. And they they got too deep into that grant history and forgot about product development and forgot about venture investing at all. And they had a very good skill in getting grants, but they couldn't develop the product. In fact, because getting grants is a very time-wasting history, time-wasting story. You have to invest a lot of your personal time there. And of course, they couldn't get enough skill in dealing with investors. And then we had this experiment with invested there just a very, very small portion of money, our smallest investments. And they, of course, they failed in several years because they relied too much on those grants. They had to spend more time in product development and in venture capital development. So sometimes startups who develop some socially important things rely too much on grants. Just keep in mind that grant it's okay for the very beginning, just to get some very, very first money, some very, very small amounts for several months of your operations, but not more. Just don't go too deep there. Convertibles. There are two types of convertibles. Standard convertible notes and let's say safe. Safe is let's say something which looks similar like a convertible note created by Y Combinator. Convertible note, what it is, it's a type of investment when you get money from investors and you do not issue shares to the investor at the beginning, all right, at getting money. You have an obligation to issue those shares, let's say at your next fundraising round. So you can get convertibles from all types of investors, from early angels and from venture funds. There are, let's say, convertibles of $15,000, and I just recently faced a convertible note of 50 million euro. So it's not just a thing for the beginners. It may be acceptable at any stage of the company, but I would recommend not to go too deep in convertible notes, not to raise too many of them. Why? Because let's say you raise you raised one convertible note at some cap, let's say $5 million. Then you raise another in a year, you may raise another convertible note at $10 million. Then you raise another convertible note at $15 million, and so on. And those notes, the notes you raised before, are not converted yet. And be careful here, because all notes, or let's say most of convertible notes, have an interest. So interest is something like bank interest. The more you keep this loan unconverted, the more you have to, okay, the amount is growing 3-5% per year. And the longer you keep convertible note unconverted, the bigger is the amount, and the more shares you have to issue to the investor. I have a very, very good example here. We had, I can say the name. I can say the name of the company, but extremely talented founder. The startup was growing extremely fast. We invested at the very beginning, and we were extremely successful here. Too many words, extremely. So we were satisfied. But the founder raised several large convertible notes and safes year by year. And when it comes to a moment of conversion, they just couldn't even calculate what number of shares they should issue to investors because of a lot of interest accumulated. And the amount which should be converted, it grew tremendously. And they, at the moment of conversion, they were diluted, critically diluted. And the project barely died. It's a problem. It's a real problem. So just keep in mind that convertible is a good thing, but you always must understand how you will be diluted at a conversion event. So standard convertible terms is valuation cap or uncapped. So if you have a valuation cap, let's say $5 million, that normally equals to a company valuation. Or you can raise an uncapped value, which means that the investor who gave you money will be converted, will get their shares at a valuation related to your next fundraising. Now you're raising an uncapped valuation, and next year you will raise at $10 million. So this investor will be converted at $10 million in a year. Or you may have a discount, let's say $10 million minus 20% or something. Interest rate, yes, it's that story I told you about. It's just similar to a bank interest rate. Normally it's 2-3-5% per year. Term is when your convertible note must be converted. And conversion event, when it should, at what event it should be converted. Let's say usually it's a next equity fundraising. It's a standard term. So yeah, there are two different types of convertible notes and safes. And safe is a very, very standard form. Almost no change accepted here. It's best working for US-based companies. It usually has no interest, but it's up to you. And investors' share may be defined or not. So it may be a post-money or pre-money safe. A convertible note has a much more random form, and in every country it has unique some unique features and unique requirements to convertible notes. It should be up to your legal system. But it's still acceptable in most jurisdictions. It usually has an interest rate, and usually investors' share is not predefined. So yeah, a very good instrument, very simple in deal making. So if you want to raise money fast, just use the convertible note or safe if you can. It may took, I don't know, 1-2 weeks to close the deal with this instrument, while equity fundraising may last for a month or two. What is equity financing? Yes, as I told, it's about issue new shares in exchange for venture money. Complexity depends on the particular case. It may be quite simple or maybe extremely complex. Immediate dilution means that you issue new shares to the company, to the investor, and you dilute your share in the company. Okay, most of equity financing terms are pre-post money valuation. Pre-money valuation is, let's say, is calculated on the before the round. So you just declare that your company's valuation is $10 million and you raise $2 million here. And that means that post-money valuation will be $12 million. Type of shares, common or preferred, they have some differences, but let's keep it to legal attorneys. You may accept a director or observer rights. So director is a part of your board who has some management power, and you can grant to your VC a director right, a director seat in your company. And this director will have real power, some real power. It's very important how to form the board in the right manner. So you may have 1, 2, 3, 4 directors in the board, and it depends on, let's say, main decisions in your company depends on the board combination. An observer right. Observer is a person dedicated by your investor, maybe some investment manager or something, who can access your reports, access materials you prepare for the board, but have no management rights here, no power here. He may just observe and get reports from your side, and that's it. So liquidation preference, tag-along and drag-along rights, so they're quite important, but I wouldn't cover them here because it's much better to discuss them in detail. So it just a very important thing, and you have to go deeper here with your legal attorneys, or just read beforehand some materials before you raise some money. So in cash out, yes, it's the most preferable thing for you when you get your lovely million. But the problem here is some startup founders want to get cash out at early stages, and really for some deals I faced this term to be a deal breaker. So if I'm at, let's say, pre-series A company, I try to invest in a pre-series A company, and I face a founder who wants to sell, let's say, 30% of his share at this stage. That means that he doesn't believe in his company. That means that he doesn't believe in further development, and he wants to cash out and maybe to change the job in a year. So it may become a deal breaker when you push your investor to buy your own shares at early stages. Just keep in mind that cash out is okay, but you have to build a business before that. Investor must understand that you will not leave the company, and when you sell your own shares, it might be a very small portion, maybe, I don't know, 5% up to 10% of your shares, just to give you some money for living. It's still okay, but let's say Series A or pre-Series A usually is too early for cash out. So it's quite usually in terms of legal work, paperwork, it's quite a simple thing. And yeah, you just sell a part of your shares to the investor, give your money to your own bank account, and that's it. You go and buy your Maserati house, and that's it. And of course, the terms here are the same with the normal equity investments. Just price per share or company valuation, and all other things are the same. Most likely it will be common shares, because founders usually have common shares in their companies. And how to value your company? Well, company valuation is a very important thing, and there are a lot of approaches and a lot of mistakes from VCs or from founders how to value their companies. Okay, the most common mistakes are too high valuation. If you value a company much higher than market average, or the valuation may not match the company's traction. So, okay, an example here. Some years ago, I think 6 years or something, there was a very indicative deal on the market. I think it was, I forgot, some to-do manager, some very expensive to-do manager was acquired by, let's say, several $100 million, and all to-do managers in the world raised the evaluation in a second. Well, I called one. They were okay. They were quite a good one and had 5 million monthly active users. I called him, that guy, and asked him, okay, are you going to raise money? Okay, yes, we're going. At what valuation are you going to raise the money? Okay, $100 million. Do you have some revenues? So what's up with your monetization? Okay, nothing so far, but we're doing some experiments. So yeah, we're trying some strategies, and so on. Oh, I said, okay, I'm sorry, I cannot invest without an actual revenue here. So let's speak in half a year. In half a year, I call him and ask, so, hello, how are you doing, guy? He's okay. He was okay. He was eating something. I remember it. And I asked him about the valuation, and he told me, okay, now we're raising at 50 million. Because it was not a market trend now. Okay, what's up with your monetization? So yeah, we're still experimenting with something, testing some strategies and so on. I said, okay, let's speak in a year. In a year, I called him and asked, what's up, man? So his valuation was 20 million. 20 million with no progress in monetization so far. This company is still alive. I think somebody has invested there because they at least they had an audience, but I'm not sure about the monetization. Maybe they're not launched that. So valuation is a very relative thing. So it's not stable. There are no obvious universal rules how to value a company. It all depends on the market. It all depends on your traction. It depends on your expectations and on VC's expectations. Okay, and then I will get back here. I think yes, but another common mistake is the wrong round size. So two big mistakes: too big round, too small round. So too big round is when you value your company at 10 million bucks and you want to raise, I don't know, 10 million bucks more. That means that your post-money valuation will be 20 and the founder's share come to 50% in the company, which is a extremely great dilution. And unfortunately, I face such cases quite often when people just want to get as much money as possible at early stages. So even investor can give him those money, can give him those 10 million. To get 50% in the company, but it's a mistake. It's always a mistake. In most cases, you just don't need too much money at once. You just need money enough to raise your traction, to fill cash gaps, to make some reserves for unexpected situations, and they always occur. And then next, another round at much bigger valuation based on your new traction. It's a very common mistake, mostly for early stage startups. Another mistake is the fundraising round is too low. You try to raise too small amount just to fill the cash gaps. So you always have to understand you fill cash gaps, and startup is a too risky thing, and you have to make some buffer. And usually, if your cash gap is, let's say, 300K euro, just raise 500, so it will be okay, but not less. You must always have a reserve. One of the most popular reason of startups dying is a lack of money. So yeah, just keep it in mind. Don't get too much and don't get too small amount. There are different cases, different approaches in companies valuation. Okay, from the VC side. Maybe the most popular one is an industry case. So if I have some indicative deal on the market, and I understand, let's say, somebody have just bought a good, I don't know, health tech company, and I have something similar in my pipeline. So I understand that this company will be more expensive now, and this is the trend, and I have to expect high valuation than I could offer them. So if you have, let's say, an indicative deal at $100 million for the company who has, let's say, 1 million monthly active users. So, and you have just 1,000 okay, not 1,000, maybe 10,000, 100,000 monthly active users. So you have to just calculate your valuation using the same multiple, or almost the same multiple with that indicative deal. It's a very, very standard approach, but of course, you have to have this indicative deal to compare. Simpler thing with revenue-based approach, of course, only applicable for quite a mature companies with revenue streams. Oh, I got a mistake here. Net revenue. I'll fix it. So you just, me as a VC, I just get your actual or your annualized revenue and just use some multiple, apply some multiple here. So I can get your, let's say, monthly revenue and use multiple 100. So it's a very standard thing for, let's say, SaaS companies. If I want to get a fair valuation for a SaaS company, I get 100 MRR, monthly recurring revenue. It's a very common approach. Indicative, of course, it's not the final one, but I can estimate whether this company is 10 times more expensive or less expensive than this indicative parameter. So let's say if you have 100K in MRR, then your fair value is 10 million euro. So something like this. And if you grow extremely fast, your fair value may be, let's say, 150 MRR. If you grow extremely low, then your fair value may be, I don't know, 50 or 20 MRR or something. But it may be MRR related if you have a subscription services or something with recurring revenue. Alternative costs.
May I address a question here?
Yeah.
Can you go back with your slide, please?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to help me understand better the net revenue indicator, especially for SaaS services. Those are paid subscription, or we have to exclude some costs, some operational costs out of there. For instance, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I understand the question. So net revenue, I have another lecture in financial management for startups, but here we don't cover it here. So net revenue is, let's say, if you have a SaaS system, it's quite often a very simple thing. So you have a turnover, all your SaaS revenue incoming into company, and for SaaS systems, it mostly the same with net revenue. But for some cases, you have to pay somebody, maybe some middleman, or some, I don't know, marketplace or something, who took just a part of your revenue at the very high level. Let's say for SaaS systems, in 90% of cases, it's the same, gross revenue and net revenue. But for some cases, you have to pay some contractors or some middlemans or some, I don't know, commission to somebody at a high level before the money comes to your stuff, your company's stuff. And net revenue is, let's say, the second string. The first, the upper string is gross revenue, then net revenue, then operational revenue, and net loss or income. So, and important thing here is net revenue. For example, sometimes I meet marketplaces, let's say marketplaces, which have to pay a lot of money to their companies who are presented on that marketplace. So the turnover of the marketplace is maybe 10 times higher than their net revenue or something, but much higher. And if they give me, so let's say we have 1 million GMV, monthly GMV, or 1 million monthly gross revenue, I understand that the money which comes to a company, physically to a company, are maybe 10 times lower, and gross revenue is not indicative here. So I always ask them for net revenue. Okay, is it okay? Can we go forward? Okay. Alternative costs. Another approach here is when me as, let's say, a purchaser of your company, I just compare whether what is cheaper for me, to buy your company or to organize the same service inside my corporation. It's quite a common thing when a corporation, I don't know, some Amazon, just acquire some maybe struggling company for their audience. We in TMT, we sold one to-do manager, a very small one, to Yahoo. It was our, I think, one of our first exits. This to-do manager was not in a good state, but they couldn't monetize their audience, but they still have several million monthly actual users every month. And Yahoo just calculated, okay, it's much easier and much cheaper to buy this startup than to get another 2 million audience in our own to-do manager. So, and they just bought this startup for cost of audience. I can't remember what was the cost, but I think it was $2 or $3 per user or something. Just an alternative costs. Or the company may be acquired for their intellectual property. So if they have some very valuable development, and me as a corporation, I understand, okay, I need 2 years to develop the same thing. And it's much cheaper to buy those guys and hire the team, than to develop it myself. So I buy them for, I don't know, $5 million. Otherwise, I should spend $10 million and 2 years of work. Next thing is fixed price. So it's most usual thing for accelerators. If you get to an accelerator, in many cases, they have just a fixed valuation of all companies getting them. So it's fair even for Y Combinator. In Y Combinator, you know, it's a very famous, extremely successful accelerator. And sometimes even mature companies come there. Companies who was valued at 10 or 20 or more million. And if they reach Y Combinator have the same term for everybody. So they invest some small portion of money at, let's say, $2 million, whatever your valuation was in the previous round. They have just a fixed price for everybody. It's a good approach, but it's very special approach for accelerators or incubators or somebody else who do massive investments in tens of startups at once. And of course, there are some bonuses and discounts. First is karma based. Karma is, let's say, your team's experience. If you're just a group of students, you may have one prize. If you are a group of ex-Google high-level tech guys, you may have 10x larger price of the company. If you're an experienced serial entrepreneur with successful exits or with a special expertise in your particular segment and proven expertise, in the past, you may be a head of a large corporation or something. Of course, it's all those things are very important for your valuation, and you may have a bigger or smaller valuation depending on your karma. Case-based, yes, as I told, landmark deals. If you have a landmark deal on the market, similar businesses always raise their valuation. After some big faults, all similar businesses become cheaper. And I had one example here. We had a very good subscription-based company. Let's say a number of very good subscription-based companies. So they just sell some goods on a subscription basis in the US. And there was let's say, if I'm not mistaken, Blue Apron. Blue Apron was always a subscription-based company. If I'm not mistaken, it was a public one. And it was struggling 1 year, several years ago. It was really struggling, and their economical model was not proven at all. And all subscription-based startups that year were struggling in their valuation, and our companies couldn't raise enough money. So, because the valuation came 2 times cheaper or something. It all depends. So just keep in mind that if you are big enough, if you grew your company to some valuable level, just always track what's happening on the market. It will affect you anyway. And location-based, of course, it's understandable. When you are in the US or in, I don't know, Switzerland or in UK, the same startup there may be much more expensive than the same startup in the Eastern Europe. So that was the reason for us when we came to Estonia. We were one of the first Estonian active in Russian-based venture funds active in Estonia. When we invested in Bolt, in Pipedrive, which is a very famous company, and we were amazed that Estonian guys, they were very cheap. The startups were very cheap, and the quality of startups were very high. And we just compared it. The same story in the US would be 3-4 times more expensive for us. And we were very happy at the beginning. It was 8 years ago. 8-7 years ago, Estonian and Baltic startups were at a very high level and very low prices. And that was very attractive for VCs and was a driver of developing their market. So what else? About the dilution. So here's just a study example of a good case how to dilute your share, how not to dilute your share. So just a very indicative thing. Of course, it's not a rule, but a good example to analyze. So when you raise your first money, it's good to dilute not more than for 10 or 20%. Very, very bad stories, very sad stories with young startups when they are being diluted at the very first fundraising at pre-seed or seed stage. They're diluted at 30 or 40%. Just try not to do like this. 10, 20% is enough. and raise money for 3-6 months just to, I don't know, make an MVP or first customer development, first product developments. Not just try not to raise too much, not to be diluted too much, because your early shares are the most expensive ones for you. So yeah, next round may be diluted for 10-15%, then also something like 10-15%, and more mature rounds can dilute you for 5-10%. Let's say it's such an academic approach. You may follow it, you may not follow it, but just keep in mind one main rule: keep as much founders' share in your company as possible for as long as possible. It's a good practice when at Series A. Let's just remember this thing. At Series A, when your company has something like 100,000 euro monthly revenue, it's just a common Series A stage. Founders' share must not be less than 50%. For example, in our company, in TMT, we almost never invest in startups when at Series A founders have less than 50% in the company. It's an extremely important thing. It's a problem, for example, in the United Kingdom. Several years ago, we started investing in United Kingdom startups, and there is a very common story there. So everybody understand that in London, there are a lot of very rich guys from all parts of the world. And they just want to keep their money from the taxes. And in the UK, there is some law that if you invest money in startup, you don't have to pay taxes for this amount or something. And a lot of high net worth individuals in London invest and start in early stage startups. And let's say I can look at the early stage cap table, and I see there 30-40 private persons already invested. And as soon as they are not professional VCs, not professional angels, but very good businessmen, so they just push founders to be diluted for tremendous amounts. And I reject a lot of very good UK-based startups because of that. Because founders at Series A stage have 30-40% maximum in the company. So it's extremely low. Why it's important? So if you don't get it, why it's important? It's a very important thing in terms of VC, because I understand if you, at Series A, if you're diluted at, I don't know, down to 30% in the company, that means that after next round, you'll be diluted up to 20, down to 20, or even less, and you may lose your motivation. You just personally, you as a private person, as a founder of the company, you may lose your motivation, and you will think much more about leaving the company and organizing a new one where you have 100%, using the experience you gained in your previous company. In our practice, we faced at least one such case at our early stage of activity, when we invested in the company where founder had 30 or something percent, and after 2 years he left that company and organized a new one. And there was a court. It finished not good for that founder, but anyway, the company and the investment were lost. So just be careful with your shares dilution. It's very underestimated thing. Something like, okay, options. Option pool, of course, so you understand what is option pool. Is just a part of shares to be granted to your staff, to your developers, to other staff. And there is a bad practice where you have no option pools before the fundraising, and you just push people work for salary. it's okay for some people, but for critical people in your company, of course, they must be motivated with some options, with some shares. Post-money option pool, let's dilute our investors. What does it mean? It means that before the fundraising, you have no option pool. And when investor, okay, he's inexperienced, he doesn't understand how things are doing, he invested, let's say, I don't know, 100K in your company, and after that you form option pool for 10%. That means that this new investor will be also diluted for this 10%. Okay, if he accepts, he's just a fool. But for professional investors, when you face a professional VC, try to form an option pool before you get money from this investor. Too large options, yes, sometimes it's a problem when founders are very democratic, very extremely positive towards their stuff, and they form too large option pools and dilute themselves. So I faced several such cases. It's not workable cap tables. So your new investor, if they are professional ones, they will push you to rebuild the cap table and to rebuild your agreements with your employees. And a good practice. Something about a good practice, 10 to 15% for option pool before new equity investments. It's okay. It's okay number. Most VCs are okay with 10 to 15% vesting for 2 to 4 years. It's just a standard practice. And options granted to key employees only. So if you grant an option to a courier, to storage manager, it's not right. So options, shares in your company must be granted only to the very key employees who are critical for your company. So your key tech guys, your key sales guys, marketing guys, but those who are critical for your company. If the person is not critical, think twice before vesting options to them.
Levan, can I ask? Sorry.
Yeah.
How often do you use a vesting practice? And maybe you can highlight a bit key points about vesting. I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with this approach.
Well, in fact, all companies we invest in they have option pools. Of course, it's one of a critical term before we enter the company. And the vesting period, vesting practice, well, maybe I'm not familiar as a legal attorney here, so I can't advise you how to form a documentation for vesting, but just an overall approach is an option pool to, let's say, your, I don't know, CTO will be splitted for equal portions for 4 years, let's say 1% in the company per year, or maybe calculated in shares, let's say 1,000 shares per year. And if your CTO is still working on you after any new year, he just get these 1,000 shares, and that's it. And you just reflect it in your cap table. So that's it. I think the documentation here is pretty standard. It may have some features related to your personal jurisdiction, your legal system. But yeah, so maybe I didn't understand your question.
No, I just wanted to ask him to explain to the audience. So what does it mean vesting as a practice, and do you use vesting period for only option pool or for key co-founders as well? Because I faced that investors requested vesting period for founders as well. So that's interesting. How do you operate with this?
So, okay. TMT is an extremely democratic fund. So we never push co-founders. We value them really high. And let's say from case to case, it may be different. If I see that the founders were diluted too much, but they have enough option pool, so we can just place a term in SPA that these founders, in order to raise their motivation in the company, will get some amount from the option pool for, I don't know, next 2 or 3 years. But let's say it's quite a rare case. So we just try not to go to the deal where the founders are too much diluted. I remember just maybe 2 or 3 such cases in our history. In regards to the key employees, yes, it's very important. We try to understand who are the persons which will get shares, and trying to understand, speak to the founders whether these persons are really critical for a company or not. So, because for, let's say, this example, I spoke before about our Silicon Valley based company with a development office in the Silicon Valley. There are a lot of staff, a lot of employees who get shares in the company, really a lot of. And they have, in fact, in their situation, they understand that I hire this developer. Okay, he's not critical, but he has a term. I will work for you only if you give me some shares in the company. Otherwise, I'm leaving and go to the next company who gives me shares. So it's a very common in their Silicon Valley culture to get shares to even to not critical employees. But for normal stories, yes, I would really ask you not to vest too much shares, not to vest too much options to not critical people. Okay, yeah. So let's go next to the cap table. So the cap table is a summary table where you have information about all your shares, who has how much shares of what type, total shares, FDB, those letters means fully diluted basis. So I will explain what it is. So fully diluted means that you calculate here the share in the company, including an option pool. So in this particular case, there are 30,000 shares in the option pool, and fully diluted basis means that 100% is a total 1 million shares, including that option pool shares. So in some cap tables, you can face percent share in the company without an option pool. That means that it's not fully diluted. So it's just for you, because just to understand what's the difference. So we have a case study here. I think we have enough time to understand what it is. It's a case study about, let's say, some company, some SaaS service, and I tried to use all types of investments here, all cases or potential cases of investments here, and tried to give you a view how to calculate the number of shares and how to calculate their company's valuation and so on. So, okay, let's say there is some B2B SaaS solution. I don't know what it is, it doesn't matter. There are 2 co-founders, Jim and Fred, and they invested 30,000 K in their company. They didn't form any option pool because there are just only 2 of them. And at the beginning, they have 850,000 shares, and something like 50-50 in the company with a slight difference. And they want to raise some new money. So first they faced Accelerator, and Business Accelerator invested 150K in equity at 2 million pre-money valuation. Why 2 million? Because this Accelerator has common rule for all investees, all companies who are coming to this Accelerator, so are valued at 2 million pre-money. That's the common rule for everybody. But they have an additional term that guys have to allocate 15% pre-money option pool, just to make an option pool for new employees. So what you have to start with, form this option pool before the new investment. So at the beginning, you have 850,000 shares. In fact, if you have to place a 15% option pool, that means that this amount comes to 55% of the target company's valuation. Oh, not a mistake here. So 15% option pool means 150,000 shares. So the total capitalization will come to 1 million shares. So, and this new option pool will dilute founders for 15%. Quite simple. Then you have to understand. Price per share. So you have now 1 million shares, total shares in the company, and 2 million valuation, pre-money valuation. So you have just $2 per share. And so accelerators shares, they will invest 150,000 per $2 per share. That means 75,000 shares. So yes, here we have a cap table which reflects pre-acceleration situation and post-acceleration picture. So pre-acceleration, yes, we have formed this option pool. Yeah, just noticed here. And after the acceleration, we have what? We have new dilution for founders, new marked with green share of accelerator with their 75,000 shares, and the option pool, please notice it was already diluted, also diluted like the founders. Each founder and the option pool was diluted for 6.98%. So pre-money valuation was $2 million, post-money valuation was 2 and 150. So that's it, pretty simple. Of course, guys, if you have questions, please raise your hands and we'll discuss.
Oh, just I have a question, but it's not related with how it's calculated. Mm-hmm. Usually, when an accelerator is investing some money, in this case 150, mm-hmm. Usually those money are all invested within the company growth or development, right?
Yeah, usually yes.
That's basically 99% of the scenarios. I just wanted to check it. Is that right? Yeah.
Usually yes. So they have the requirement that you have to spend this money for, let's say, staff or MVP or developers or something. It depends on particular case and on the aim of this particular accelerator. So the next thing is, after, let's say, half a year, they faced a business angel who wanted to invest 400K at post-money safe at 5 million cap. Valuation method is 10x IRR. So they just have some revenue, let's say 500,000 per year. IRR is annualized revenue rate. There are different meanings of IRR, but here it's annualized revenue rate. Okay, if they have $500,000 per year, so 10x valuation, 10x multiple means they have 5 million cap. If they have a post-money safe, that means that angel's share is predefined as 8% in the company. We just divide 400K and 5 million. But as it's safe as a convertible instrument, and it will be converted into shares only before the next equity round, at the next equity round, where they when they raise their next money in the form of equity. So at the moment there are no changes in cap table. A startup just get the money, just put somewhere that they have a safe for these terms and keep living as they did before. And all investors keep their shares. So let's see what happens. Cap is $5 million. total shares, as you remember, was more than 1 million. And post money is the same, $5 million, and they raised new money of 400K, and no changes in cap table at all. All shares keep being the same as they were before. The next round was an equity. Some VC fund invested 2 million at 10 million pre-money valuation. So, and as soon as it's an equity investment, first thing you have to do is to convert your previous safe investment. Effective conversion valuation is 5 million. Despite this round was valued at 10 million, in your safe it's noted that this angel will get his shares at the valuation of 5 million. Okay, so we know that he had a predefined share of 8% of 1,075,000 of total shares. That means this number of shares, 93,000. So there's new shares which have to be issued before the equity round and have to be issued for this angel investor. You issue new shares and your total capitalization comes to this number, 1,100,000 something. And this will be the capitalization right before getting money from a VC. So now you have to get money and issue new shares for the VC. And price per share here will be calculated on this, based on this amount of shares after conversion. So 10 million divided on this amount gives us 8.56 per share. And in exchange for 2 million, you have to issue more than 200,000 shares for a VC. So, and post-money valuation is 12 million. 10 million pre-money plus 2 million of new money. What we see in cap table? First, pre-round A, those red boxes are describing the dilution after conversion of the safe. So Angel got their 8% in green box. That means that all other shareholders will be diluted for 8%. So post round A and UVC comes with their 16.67%. That means that all shareholders dilutes down to this amount. So that's it. So you just dilute all shareholders, issue new shares, and your post-money valuation is 12 million. What's next? Next is cash out. Jim and Fred are very successful entrepreneurs. They wanted to sell a part of their shares to buy new cars, and so they offered their investors, existing investors, to buy just 5% of their shares, just a small part. Companies MRR-based valuation, let's say, I don't know, 100x MRR is 20 million now. So it's a very usual term when at cash out, investor will have a discount. So if an official valuation is 20 million, then after a discount, effective valuation will be 16 million. So 20% discount is a very common number. So just be ready. If you are mature enough to sell your own shares, investor will offer a discount, and the normal amount will be 20%. And it's okay. Just don't be aggressive there. It's a normal practice. So total deal amount, they just sell 5% of 16 million at 800K, which are pretty good amount for two young guys. So everybody's happy. Two investors decided to participate, VC and an angel, at 70 to 30%. So what we do? First, we have to form the pool of shares for sale, we have to understand how much shares Jim should sell and Fred, how much shares Fred should sell. So the total 5% cash out pool is 70,000 shares, which is a 5% of post-money capitalization from the previous round. So originally, guys have these amounts of shares, 400 and 450. And using a proportional distribution, they will sell 37 and 32,000 of shares. So now what we have to do, now we have to distribute the shares among investors, because they participate in the round 70 to 30%. So then Angel will buy 30% of the total option pool for 2040. VC will buy 70% of the total pool for 560. Okay, so here it's reflected in their cap table. So we have a pre-money. Oh yeah, pre-money cap table with 16 million valuation. Post-money is the same 16 million valuation, because just notice that no new money came into company, just personally to the founders. And here we have red boxes, common shares. They sold some common shares, which were transferred to the green boxes to Angel and to VC. And of course, they had a dilution in red boxes, and Angel and VC raised their share in the company for corresponding amounts. Everybody's happy. Guys have their money. Investors have a larger share in the company because the company is very successful and they want to sell it in 2 years for 10 billion. I think, guys, that's it for today. And I have some questions here. If you want, we can discuss them. If you have your own questions, we just raise your hand and we can discuss something. I can get back to some slide if you want to discuss something particular.
I have a question, if I may. This is Victor from Abzi.
Okay.
So let's assume you are an early stage startup and you make no money, or you make little money. How usually does a pitch look? So how do you go to investor? Are you just pointing to the marketplace and how you sell yourself? That's how you get money, or is there I don't know, a certain process at what the investors look, besides what you showed? If you have some examples of these requirements, it'll be interesting.
Well, okay. First, what you have to understand, what investor do you need? What investor can invest in your company? So speaking about, let's say, our fund, we don't invest in very early stage startups, so it makes no sense to come to somebody like us. But if you have, let's say, some networking event in your city, or you understand that those group of angels invests in early stage startups, so what you do, you just represent your company in the best way you can do it. So you just have to represent your value proposition. What is the difference between you and your competitors, if you have some competitors, of course? What are your unique approach? What is your secret sauce? So secret sauce is, yes, what can give this investor larger profitability than than market competitors can provide. So even if you don't have a revenue so far, you have to explain first what is your real value of the company. Maybe, I don't know, some principle in you work with the audience, maybe some principle in your product, maybe a really great potential of the product, next big thing or something, what people say about. So just try to represent the opportunity, some opportunity. to get money or to get audience or to build something principle in you or something.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Can we somehow get a hand on this presentation to read it again, to really study it?
If I got it right, Maria will send it. So.
Oh, awesome.
I think, but I noticed I have a number of typos here. I will fix them, send to Maria, and I think Maria will send it to you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, welcome.
Hey, I'm Stas. I have a question about option pool. So, for example, I've gotten a designer which is very good working, and I'd like to offer her some percent, yeah. And how should I do it? How should I count? So how it works? Like, I don't understand.
Okay, let's say you have a designer. Just look at these numbers: 10 to 15% before first equity investments. So if you have an investment plan, so you understand that I will raise some valuable amount of money, let's say $1 million in 2 years. So before these 2 years, you just plan to form an option pool of, let's say, 10%. Then you, as a businessman, should understand what people do I need before I raise these $1 million. So I need, okay, a very good designer whom I want to keep in the company, but I still need, let's say I have CTO, but I need some critical, I don't know, PHP developer, or maybe, I don't know, web designer, or maybe a salesperson, or maybe somebody else. And you have to just prepare your staff plan beforehand. Of course, it's not a final thing, but you have to just to estimate what people do you need before first large investments. And have to understand that who are the most critical among them, and if this designer person is really critical for your project, it might happen, of course. Just provide him with a share, some particular share out of these 10%, to keep enough share for other critical persons in your staff plan. Let's say you need three more critical people within 2 years, and maybe it's good to provide 2 persons with, I don't know, 3% of the company, and 2 less critical persons with, I don't know, 2% in the company. So this designer might have 2%, for example.
Yeah, for example, 2%, and 2% investing period for example, 4 years, or just
2 to 4 years. So let's say 2, 3, 4 years is just a normal term. It's up to you and up to your the way you conversate with this designer, the way you deal with this designer. So if 4 years is okay, and if you want to motivate him to be in the company for as long as possible, okay, let's do it for 4 years.
So, for example, I give 4% in 4 years, and I divide 4 years in 4%. So I give him 1% per year. Yes,
something like this. Yeah. Just keep in mind that early stage investor, for example, some professional, I don't know, angel, when he comes to your company, he may ask, why this designer has 4%? For me as investor, I invest, let's say, I don't know, 200,000 euro for 10%. And this designer is a really critical person to have this 4%. And for some investors, you have to explain why you give such quite a serious option to the designer, and that this person is really critical for your company. In some cases, just you might be ready that investor will ask you to rebuild your agreements with this person. if he thinks that the share is too big.
Okay, and the last question. So, should I give a salary with the some percent, or so?
It's up to you. If you have money to pay him salary, you pay him just salary and those shares. If I don't know, it's up to you and your agreements. Normal case is when you have money in your company, you pay salary, of course, and along with shares. So once per year, you just grant, let's say, thousands of shares in the company to this particular person, and it's not related to a salary at all.
Okay, thank you.
As founders, should we like work for free, or can we get a salary and leave our main jobs and focus full time on the company startup?
So yes, of course, it's from case to case. At early stage, it's quite okay when you keep your job, full-time job, along with startup. But I would recommend, as soon as you get first money, plan this amount of money to let you leave your job and work 100% on the startup. And it may be a requirement of a normal investor. Just leave your job and go here, man, because I need your expertise here. I need this startup to be managed in the right manner.
Thanks. I have a question. So the shares like are indefinite? It's not a definite number, yeah? Or how do they? How are they counted? Like the amount of shares? You wrote that they were like 850,000, yeah. And how from where this number had gotten?
From the heaven. It's in fact, it doesn't matter. It just maybe some comfortable number at the beginning. This picture at the beginning, it doesn't matter. It may be 2 shares or 3 shares or 1 million shares or 1 billion shares. It doesn't matter. Just should be some comfortable number to be for division, to be divided for several parts. Simple example, I faced a lot of companies who had, let's say, 1,000 shares or 100 shares at the beginning. But this number is not comfortable when you have to calculate, let's say, 52.94% or even less if your share is more expensive, less expensive.
That would mean like they get 0.1 shares to somebody or something like that. Okay.
It's just not comfortable in terms of calculation. Okay. So I would recommend to use hundreds of thousands of shares. It's the most comfortable numbers, not millions, but just hundreds at least.
Okay. Can I ask, so you as an investor, are you going to deal with the startup when both founders has 50% percentage of the company, or it will be like some kind of deal breaker for you?
If 2 founders have 50%, it's okay, absolutely okay. I see no deal breakers here. If both founders are involved into operations, because sometimes there are situations when one founder is deeply involved in operations, and the second founder, co-founder, was just, let's say, an investor. He helped at the beginning with something. He helped with money, with maybe to launch the project, and then he became just a silent founder. He is not involved in operations and still have 50% in the company, and that may become a deal breaker. So sufficient share in the company must be owned only by persons who are deeply involved. So yeah.
So you don't see here a risk of conflicts and not absence of ability to make decisions.
In fact, one person is a CEO always, and it has the decision power.
In some jurisdictions, there are several CEOs. For example, in Czech Republic, you can have up to 10 directors with right of signature.
Yeah, sometimes it's a risk, but it's, let's say, those things are not cannot be solved formally. Usually not solved formally. Usually I just see the team. I understand that, okay, this is a problematic guy and he has larger amount. Okay, I may face problems with him. Maybe we'll have to redistribute some shares before the round or something. But as usual, it's one of the questions of sustainability of team. So there are a lot of potential issues with team. It's just one of them. So if you, I don't know, if your CTO has no shares or too small option pool, he will leave you and the company will be closed. It's another potential problem. So it's not critical. It's all such things may be solved. Not a deal breaker.
I'm not sure. Sorry, Evgeny, you are finished? Okay. I'm not sure, Levan, if you are familiar with the legal expertise and the incorporation of the companies, but I will ask, maybe you have some insights here. What's the, can you walk us a little bit through the incorporation of the company, and which country is the best, and in what scenarios is the best to incorporate companies, for instance, in the US, UK, or within EU countries? Just, I would like your input here.
So, okay, yes, I'm not a legal attorney, but I would just, yeah, here. Okay, let's just discuss. It all depends on your plan. So let's say if you are some globally oriented company, a globally oriented market, and in your business development plans, you're not going just to cover, I don't know, Eastern European market or Moldovan market or something, and your main revenue stream is out of the US. So you're creating a product with customers in US. So then maybe it works for you to organize headquarters in the USA, and development office in Moldova, let's say. In terms of incorporation, of course, US is the simplest one. I wouldn't say they're too cheap, but very simple, with a lot of very experienced legal attorneys, well-done infrastructure, and so on. In Europe, okay, Europe is very different. I would recommend UK, Netherlands, maybe for some cases Portugal. In Portugal, it's a good place for development teams, quite cheap, and a lot of professionals there. Finland, maybe Estonia, or all Baltics countries, so Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. In terms of, I don't know, Western Europe, besides Netherlands, maybe no other country, because they have a lot of local restrictions. So maybe I'm not very high professional here, but that's what I hear on the market. UK is a good thing, of course, quite expensive, but good, because you have an access to a lot of money there. The Netherlands, okay, that's it. That's it, I think.
Can I maybe specify this question? If the founder, if startup has a choice to be incorporated in US or UK, but in UK, for instance, for example, they have already connections, does it make sense for them to put all their efforts to be incorporated in US, or so they can start from UK?
It depends from case to case. So if you want to reach US investors, it's better to be incorporated in the US. If you are good with UK investors and with the UK market, you can stay in the UK and be successful there. So there are a bit different approaches to the markets and to investments in US and UK. As I told before, it's, let's say, pretty simple to get money in the UK, but you can pay with a larger dilution there. But it's much more maybe efficient to for mature companies to be in the US to get to the largest VCs, because US-based VCs they quite rarely invest out of US, even in the UK. So yeah, being in UK, you can reach European-based investors, UK-based investors, and of course, it depends on the market. So where are you going to get revenue from? If it's a global market, maybe US is still the best variant. If you're going to reach UK market or European market, maybe UK is the best case here.
Okay, guys, any other questions? I think, to be honest, there are, so yeah, only specific, also a specific question one. If you can advise maybe some cap table applications or whatever, so where guys can simply calculate the future of the investments and equity.
Besides Excel.
I understand that. So mostly Excel is used for this exercise, but maybe you
yes, I think I know a couple of them. So for most jurisdictions, Carta is working really well. Carta. Mostly for US-based companies, but I think they got a mandate for European companies now as well. It's a paid service, of course, and for European-based, I forgot. I barely invested there, and I forgot the name. Okay, just I will send it to you, to Maria, recommend it. But you know, as per my practice, most of early stage startups calculate their shares in Excel, and the form I pasted here in the presentation is the most common, the very simple and most common thing I ever seen, based on my experience. Because a lot of startups, a lot of companies invent their own forms for cap table. And in fact, it doesn't matter. So you can use Excel or you can use some cloud service. At the beginning, it doesn't matter. The complications come when you are at mature stage, when you have several tens of investors with different terms, with different unconverted instruments, interest rates, and so on. But at the beginning, it doesn't matter. Of course, it's very simple.
Yeah.
I would recommend you not to complicate it too much and use Excel.
Side note, I wanted to say that if you're interested in incorporating in USA, Stripe has a very good package for it. It's called Stripe Atlas, and they do most of the paperwork for you. And being in, it will cost about, I don't know, $1,000 and maybe some expenses yearly for the accountancy, but you get pretty much everything, and you get exposed to a lot of credits and bonuses. And I remember one of them was Segment, a tool for calculating the shares. And also you can get credit. So it's an interesting program to check out if you want to go out to USA. I will write it in chat.
Okay, great.
Maybe last question to Levan. I'm not sure if we touched this topic. So there are a lot of articles that say that even from the very beginning, even before the company legally established, it makes sense for co-founders, for partners to sign some preliminary agreement, founder agreement. So does it make sense for you as investor? And so if it makes sense for founders as well?
I know, look at them. So it's the same thing. It's team sustainability issue. So if you're good between founders are good between themselves, they have good relationships. For me, it's not critical whether you have a founder agreement or not. If you do it, okay, it's still all right, but it's not a deal breaker if you don't have it. So
okay.
Yeah, nothing serious here.
Okay, so thank you so much, Levan. It was a very valuable presentation, very valuable information. I think that for all startups, so on each stage, it's very important to understand what should be steps and so what should be consequences and how to choose the right investor for each stage. So thank you so much. Yeah, if it will be possible, yeah, I think that it will be great to have your presentation. So we will ask Mary to request it from your side.
Yep.
Yeah, and hope that startups from this program will soon request some investments from your side to become Capricorns in their field.
Just pay attention of 30,000 MRR.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and thank you that you invested some time into our program, into our startups.
Yeah, hope so.
Thank you very, very, very much, Levan.
Okay, welcome, guys. Always happy.
So, guys, I would offer to have 5 minutes